Hello and welcome to Let's Take a Page Out of the Pet Safety Bible. I'm Denise Fleck, the Pet Safety Crusader, and specifically today we're going to be taking page 115 and several that follow, teaching you to learn to check vitals on your dog or cat. Haiku's taking a nap, so I'm going to use my second best friend over here, the stuffed version of the Sunny Dog, not the real thing, of course. And we're going to learn to check vitals. Vitals are so important. We know about vital statistics on ourselves. Hey, Barbara, thanks for joining in. And we've, probably taken them on ourselves since we were kids. We know to check for our pulse at the carotid or very often at our wrist. We know how to take our temperatures. Our moms and dads probably did that for us when we were young. We know how to watch for breathing. We know different things about how our body is supposed to work and when it's not working its best. But it's important to know that for our furry best friends as well, because it can help us assess their level of pain when they can't tell us. And the more in tune we are with what's normal for our dog or cat, the more quickly we can determine when something isn't quite right and get them to that veterinary professional to hopefully get it fixed. Now, one of the most basic things, and I kind of already alluded to that, was checking pulse. Pulse is that rhythmic movement of blood through the arteries. The heart beats and then the blood pulses through the arteries. Arteries are the largest vessels in our bodies or in our dogs or cats that carry that life-giving blood and oxygen throughout. Now, on us humans, like I just mentioned, we very often would check it at the wrist or at the carotid artery. You want to check while you're listening to me today to see if you can actually do that. Some people have trouble even doing it on themselves, but what would be a good idea is to find out which finger you feel it the strongest in. Simply because a lot of us gravitate towards our index or our trigger finger as it's called, and since we use it so much, it may actually be desensitized. It may not be sensitive enough to feel that. So if you know which finger, and very often it's some of these middle ones, that you can detect it strongest in, that's what you're going to want to use on your furry best friend. Now, your dog or cat, the actual best place to check their pulse, that rhythmic movement of the blood going through an artery, is at the femoral artery. Think of the big femur bone in the hind leg. Now, of course, on your friend, you're not going to lift him up like I've got this guy up today, but I just want to make sure you can see. Go to that hind leg, place two fingers at the knee, and roll them to the inner fleshy side. If your dog or cat is actually laying on their side, it's like putting your fingers right in the groin. On a stuffed animal, there's an actual seam there where the leg is attached to the torso. You want to be on the leg side, right in that crevice there, feeling for that pulse. Now, on very lean animals, it's possible that just by cupping your hand behind the front leg, behind that elbow at the chest, you'll feel the heartbeat. Whether you're actually feeling the heartbeat or the pulse in the femoral artery, it should be the same tempo, the same rhythm, because the heart beats and then the blood pulses through the artery. So know what is normal for your pet. Medium to large dogs actually are a tad faster than most humans. Humans, as a rule, are somewhere between 60 and 72 beats per minute, where our larger furry friends might be somewhere around 60 to 90. As we go smaller and we get into the smaller canines, they may be as high as 160 beats per minute. But for our felines, especially if your cat has just chased her brother around the room, it's very likely that that heart rate could be somewhere in the 200 beats per minute. Think about that. That's almost 3 beats per second. That would be really hard to count. It might feel just like a flutter. So it's important that you know what's normal for your dog or cat when they're resting and after they've exercised, so that you can more quickly determine if something is out of whack and get them the help they need. Another important vital would be to check their breathing. Just like us, when our dogs and cats inhale and exhale, there's a visible movement to the chest. Sure, I'm exaggerating a little bit here right now, taking that deep breath, but that's what you might see on your dog or cat after they've exercised. Or maybe if they're sleeping, it'll just be a tiny rise and fall. But what you want to do is pay attention to the chest. One inhale and one exhalation equals 1 breath. So don't count that as 2. The best thing to do is just observe that rise and fall of the chest, or even place your hand here on the side of the body to feel for that rise and fall. Sure, you can place your hand in front of the mouth and count how many times your puppy dog exhales. But generally when your hand comes near the mouth, your dog thinks a treat's coming, he gets excited, starts to pant, and you've ruined the whole count. So really it's better to kind of do it on the sly and just place your hand on the side or watch for that rise and fall. Now, you can go to all kinds of textbooks or look online for the basic numbers for breathing, respiration, or heart rate, pulse for your dogs and cats. And in the books, they'll vary slightly, but some of them will have columns for toy breeds, small breeds, medium breeds, large breeds, extra large breeds. You know what? Our pets just don't know what column they're supposed to fall into. So it's a good measure, but what I do like you to keep in mind is that it's important to learn what is specific to your specific pet, because just like us humans, they're all unique individuals. Also keep in mind with pulse and respiration that the bigger and older the dog and cat, the slower their heart rate and the slower their breathing. The smaller and younger, the faster those two things will be. So just kind of remember puppies and kittens with an endless amount of energy bouncing off the wall. They're going to breathe faster and their heart rate's going to be faster than the old mastiff plodding along. But you have to keep that in mind with your individual pet as he goes through life too. A Labrador puppy is, well, relatively small, but he's going to get bigger and he's going to get older. So over time, those baselines will change. So I think it's important every 6 months to a year you establish new baselines on all of these vitals we're talking about so that you know what is normal for your pet and you can track any discrepancies. It's really a good idea. Now, although I've given you the page numbers in the Pet Safety Bible, I'm going to post the blog that has the written material about what I'm talking, and I'm chatting about it with you now. I don't want you to just go immediately take the vitals and write them down and think you know what's normal for your pet. Do realize that just today, when you take them, especially if you've never done this before and you've got cold fingers and you're going in your pet's groin, that may be a little upsetting and it may elevate things. It's a good idea to, and randomly over the next week or so, take them at 3 or 5 different times and then find that median or average number and use that as your baseline. Because any of us, if we just randomly check something, it might not be what's normal. Something might have just either elevated it or caused it to be lower than normal. So it's a good idea to do it several times in order to get those basic numbers. Okay, so we've talked about respiration, the breathing, the taking in and out of oxygen. We've talked about pulse, how well the blood circulates through the body. There's something else we can do as lay people that also has to do with circulation, and that's called capillary refill time. This is probably the least familiar of vitals to you, but it's something you've been checking on yourself, I'm sure, since you were a kid. Have you ever pressed on your nail bed, turned it white, and then when you remove that pressure, look to see how quickly the pink color comes back? What you are doing is checking how quickly a capillary refills after you remove that pressure. Just like the arteries, like the femoral artery where we were checking the pulse here, is the largest vessels in the body that carry blood and oxygen. Capillaries are the smallest, and they're in little connected areas and in the mucous membranes and at extremities. That's why here at the tip of your finger, it's a place we can check CRT, capillary refill time, on us humans. I think of capillaries as the areas of first resistance. So you go out to dinner or to a movie or to a concert or a play. Sometimes in these big gathering halls, they actually have the air conditioner cranked up and you can get rather chilly. What generally gets cold first? Most often it's the tips of our fingers, our toes, and maybe even our nose, because there are mucous membranes or a lot of capillaries near the surface in these areas. Being warm-blooded creatures, just like our dogs and cats, our body self-regulates all the time without us having to think about it, which is grand, because, that's not the case with our cold-blooded friends. So what happens is when we get a little bit cold, These areas with capillaries, our nose, our fingers, our toes, they automatically zap away some of the blood and oxygen from those areas and send that blood to our torso to make sure our major organs are getting all the blood and oxygen they need so that we can survive. If I lose a finger to frostbite, I'm going to be okay. But if my liver freezes up, not so much. So we're just very lucky that our body is automatically doing this. I mean, obviously when the temperatures aren't plummeting too low, but is taking care of this for us, for our dogs and our cats on a normal basis. But what that means is when we're checking our capillary refill time, like I just showed you for us humans, if that pink color comes back rather quickly, less than 2 seconds, we kind of extrapolate from that as a layperson that our circulation is good. Because if we're getting good circulation to our fingertips here, well, then we kind of assume that the major organs are getting all the blood and oxygen they need as well. So that's what we want to do, just to, like I said, to do a check if our pets are getting good circulation. This is an important check for shock. And that's something, obviously, I always discuss in pet first aid classes. It's one of the top ones as far as life-threatening conditions, and we all need to know how to manage it and how to check for it. And the way to check for it would be to check capillary refill time on our pets. However, pressing on their nail beds doesn't accomplish the mission quite like it does for us humans. So where we like to check are mucous membranes, and that are at the lip. What you do on the side of the mouth, never the front. It's often uncomfortable for dogs or cats if you lift the lip in the front. But lift the lip, or the flews as we call them, from the side and press the fleshy part of your finger, not your fingernail, right against the gum above their teeth. So get right in there and press right against the gum until you turn the area light or whiten it. Once you've done that, release the pressure and make sure that bubblegum pink comes back in less than 2 seconds. If so, your dog or cat is good to go. But if it takes longer, we're concerned, and that's why you need to know your pet first aid skills to know what to do. People often talk about the eyes being the window to the soul. Well, the gums are truly the window to health. One of the things that happens with pets, if they don't have their teeth cleaned and there's a lot of bacteria in their mouth, can do a lot of things, but it can often lead to kidney disease, which is obviously really serious since the kidneys are a filter of the body. And, you know, if the kidneys shut down, we don't have a pet or a person, whatever it happens to be. But the color of the gums tells us different things too. And we generally strive for that bubblegum pink. However, like my buddy Haiku and my friend here, well, you can't really see his gums, but my buddy Haiku has dark pigment in his lips and gums. Many cats do, and many Labrador retrievers do as well if they're black labs or chocolate labs. Oop, I think Haiku just came down. He woke up from his nap. So with the dark pigment, you can still press on the gum and lighten it, and then release to see how quickly that color comes back. You won't see the bubblegum pink. But what I prefer as a test for dark pigmented gums on pets is literally to just lower their eyelid and see if you see good pink in there. You don't need to pinch on it at all. But if you see a good pink color, again, they're good to go. However, if you see any of these other colors I'm just going to discuss in the lower lid or in the gums, you need to get your pet to veterinary help. If they're ever pale, the pet could be anemic, he could be in cardiac arrest, meaning blood isn't getting where it needs to be, or he could have lost large amounts of blood, again, meaning blood isn't where it needs to be. Kind of a grayish blue we refer to as cyanotic. That generally means a pet that's having breathing problems or who has been in pulmonary arrest. Bright red we don't want to see either. That's generally a pet suffering from heat stroke, but it can also be caused by allergies and bacterial problems as well. And still one more color we don't want to see is yellow. And it can actually be a rather vibrant yellow in the gums. It might be in the whites of the eyes as well as the eyelids, even the inner flaps of the ears, any place where there are mucous membranes and those capillaries are close to the surface. Yellow would mean that your pet has liver toxicity, something is wrong with his liver, or he could have a problem from having ingested zinc, Z-I-N-C. Now, where would a dog or cat get into zinc? Well, SPF, any kind of suntan lotion, diaper rash ointment if you happen to have, babies around the house. Sometimes people just have zinc creams around the house. But probably the biggest problem other than those would be pennies, because beginning way back in 1983, and some of you may not have even been born then, that's when they started changing our pennies in the United States from being copper discs to zinc discs dipped in copper. And we all know, if you've listened to some of my talks before about food and pets and the whole bit, but that food stays in our pets' tummies longer than it does in ours. So there's more time for that caustic, stomach acid to break down the zinc, which can result in breathing difficulties, vomiting, diarrhea, and even death. 2 pennies swallowed by a small dog can be fatal. So, why would a dog eat pennies? I don't know, but they do. They scarf them up. You may have, just been eating your roast beef or peanut butter sandwich when you pull those pennies out of your pocket and there's a fragrance of, other food on them. But they do get scarfed up like a vacuum cleaner in our pets and can be very dangerous. So do know how to check your pet's capillary refill time. And this can be a little tricky for some of you. And that's why we're going to also be going into head-to-tail checkups later this month. But it's so important. Both dogs and cats get used to the human touch as soon as you adopt them or as soon as they're born, because we need to be able to check our pets all over and actually even put fingers in our mouths. So sometimes we can grab things out that shouldn't be in there. So make sure you get your pets attuned to allowing you to give them a gentle once-over so that you can check capillary refill time. Now, a couple other things I'd like to talk to you about regarding vitals is temperature. And not the temperature that's outside. I think it has warmed up to 40 degrees here today in the Atlanta area. Some of you are colder and some of you are a lot warmer. But I'm talking about internal body temperature. Oh, thanks for the comment, Barbara. I hope that's good info. Our internal body temperature on us humans is, does anybody want to venture a guess? Well, if we think back to the days we needed to know these kind of things, it's somewhere in the area of 98.6 on average for most of us. Some of us run a little higher, some of us a little lower. So there is a range, but 98.6 is the average for humans. If your dog or cat is 98.6, he or she is in a whole heap of a lot of trouble. Both dogs and our feline best friends, on average, should be 101 degrees Fahrenheit. The range is about 100.4 to 102.5. So you want to know where in that range your pet lies on a regular basis. The best way to do that is by going to your handy-dandy first aid kit and getting out a digital thermometer. If you even have any of the old-fashioned glass mercury thermometers anymore, don't use them around a pet. And obviously, we never put the thermometer in the sharp end. We're going to take the temperature under the tail. So get a digital thermometer. It doesn't need to be pet specific, at your grocery store, your drugstore, your department store. Find one that works for you. And also along with it, have some sort of lubricant. Vaseline, vitamin E jelly, aloe vera gel, KY jelly. But you definitely want to lubricate it. Now, I don't know if you can see on the camera here, but there's a tiny little silver tip. That's where we get the temperature, not down here. Meaning, depending on the size of the pet, a ½ inch to an inch is more than sufficient. Depending on if it's your kitty or your puppy, you want to lift that tail to prevent them from sitting down. And you want to gently insert at about a 45-degree angle that well-lubricated thermometer, only that ½ inch to an inch. Sing them a lullaby, have somebody else scratch their ears, or have a laser light going around the room, never in the eyes, of course, but something to keep them, their attention on something other than what's happening back here under the tail. And hopefully you will find that your pet is within that normal range. But again, find out, because just like us humans, some are always a little below that 101 degrees, and some are always a little above it. As we get into topics about heat stroke and frostbite, you'll learn that higher and lower numbers, there are certain red flags and target numbers that we need to know about, so that we need to get to that veterinary attention ASAP. Okay, and there are just 2 more vitals I'd like to go over with you today. One is hydration, or the lack thereof, dehydration. Just like the planet Earth and us humans as well, canines and felines are about 3/4 water, and they require a good supply of it all day long, every day. So a lot of us have grown up checking hydration level on a pet by what's called the Tugor test, T-U-G-O-R. What we've learned to do is actually grab a little fold of skin here at the nape of the neck and pitch it into a tent. And then when we release it, it falls back into place quickly. We feel the pet is well hydrated. Well, older pets, like older people, don't have the elasticity in the skin that they once did, and it may just stay pinched in that peak a little bit longer. Additionally, if you have a Shar-Pei or a Basset or any pet with loose skin, you might be able to mold it and have it stay up there for the half an hour. So what I like doing is, once again, carefully going to the side of the lip, feeling the gum, and if those gums are sloppy wet, Fido or Fluffy is good to go. But if they're dry or even sticky, I would encourage my pet to drink. When he's not feeling his best, he may not go to his water bowl, but he might sip a little water out of mom's hand or suck on some ice cubes or ice chips. Kitties might run to a faucet, or you might get out some of that tuna juice just to get them hydrated. Cats are notoriously bad drinkers, and I've talked about that before, and I know I'll talk about it in the future. But what I just want you to do is make sure, because a lot of cats are eating just strictly kibble diets, make sure they're getting water in as well. A lot of kitties don't like water bowls because their whiskers touch. And what are whiskers? Kitty radar. It kind of signals them that it's too small of a place to go into. So many cats will do better if their water is in a mug or a fancy glass or a teacup, sitting on the counter. But find out what works. Maybe it's the running water, maybe it's the fountain, but make sure both dogs and cats get plenty of water every day, and do clean out those water bowls. Don't just dump them out and add more. Really wash them with warm, soapy, or very hot water to get rid of the bacteria. A biofilm forms from what's on their tongue, because their tongues actually go in their bowl. Our tongues may not go in our glasses, but our dogs and cats' tongues go in their bowls, leaving everything behind, and water breaks down, and there's just all kinds of things happening there. So make sure you provide that clean, healthy water environment for your pets. And last but not least is weight. And gosh, do I know, it's a struggle to keep us and our pets at a healthy weight. Although, with our pets, it kind of hurts our heart when they're looking at you with those big brown eyes and they want something else, and you really know you shouldn't give it to them. But we do have a bit of a control over it, and can better keep our pets at a healthy weight because we're the ones that monitor their intake. But just as a guideline, you should always be able to feel their ribs when you put your hands on the side of the chest. Hopefully it's covered by some fur and a little bit of skin and maybe some tissue and fat. But you should be able to feel the ribs without pressing too hard. Only on a few breeds should you actually be able to see even a hint of the ribs. And those are our super lean hounds, our greyhounds, our whippets, our pharaoh hounds, our Rhodesian ridgebacks. But other than that, you shouldn't be able to see them, but you should be able to feel the ribs. Also, when you look at your pet, look down at him as you stand above him. This one isn't the greatest example, but you can see a little bit here that there's a little bit of a waistline. And then finally, when you look at your pet from the side, the lower abdomen should be tucked up higher. The chest should hang lower. Now, pets and people, as we get older and we lose some muscle tone, this may level out a little bit. But you just want to make sure you don't have a great big beer belly on Fido or Fluffy. It really can exacerbate heart problems, joint problems, diabetes. So keep your pets at a healthy weight. And you may be doing great with your meals, but be very careful with those snacks. Raw pieces of zucchini are excellent. Carrots can be great, but carrots have a lot of sugar, so it just depends on your pet. But there are a lot of vegetables out there that would be, a good alternative. Make your own biscuits. I think you've seen me do some recipes before, and I will do more in the future. But stay away from the wheats, the soys, and the corns. Use almond and oat flours and oatmeals in there. And if you're giving them grains, give them the grains like the brown rice, the lentils, the quinoa. They're much healthier for our pets. But this isn't a talk about nutrition today. I just wanted to basically cover how to check your pet's vitals. So Go to the Pet Safety Bible, page 115 onward. It discusses this as well. If you don't have a copy yet, it should be on Amazon, I hope, in the next week and a half. And also check out the blog. I will post it here, but it's always at petsafetycrusader.com/blog. And I'll see you again next week to talk about more ways we can help our pets and be even better pet parents by taking a page out of the Pet Safety Bible. Talk to you soon and have an awesome possum week.